Hungarian Folk Tales. The Lad Who Watched Over the Rabbits. Once upon a time, very long ago, and far away, there lived a king, and the king had a daughter, so beautiful that even the painters could not paint her beauty. Now there came a time for her to take a husband, and the king said that he would give her in marriage to the man who could catch the apple she threw among them. So they came together, the princes and the dukes, the counts and the gypsy lads, to catch the apple. But try as they would, not one of them succeeded. But one day who should turn up but a village lad? Once again the princess flung the apple, and the lad caught it as if it had been thrown straight to him. But the king was not overjoyed at this, that a come-and-go-as-he-pleases lad was to be his son-in-law. Well then, young fellow, I don't know what kind of lad you are to catch the apple, but there's another trial in store for you. I have rabbits aplenty, and you have to watch over them. If you can watch them carefully, well and good, but if you can't, then it's off with your head. Now the lad was downcast to hear that he had to watch over the rabbits, for never before had he been a watcher of rabbits. And all of a sudden, an old woman appeared. She said, "Don't be downcast, young fellow. I shall give you a whistle, and when you go off to the meadow, all you have to do is blow it, and you'll see how useful it will be." Then they let the rabbits out, and they ran off in 1,000 directions. The lad blew his whistle, and the rabbits lined up like soldiers on parade. The king looked out and wondered what kind of lad could keep the rabbits in devilish good order. So the king said to his daughter, "Listen, daughter dear, dress yourself up as a poor young woman and take a satchel with you to the meadow and ask the lad for a rabbit, so that in the evening when he brings them home, there'll be one rabbit missing." So the princess dressed herself up in the clothes of a poor young woman, put a satchel under her arm, and went out to the meadow. "Good day to you, good rabbit herd. God save you. What brings you here, young lady?" "I'm not a lady. I'm just a poor young girl. I came to see if you could give me a rabbit." "Of course I can," he said, "if your highness will give me a kiss." "I'm not a princess," said she. And she was really fierce in denying it because she didn't want the lad to know who she was. But he knew which way the wind was blowing. "Well, just one kiss and I'll give you a rabbit." So the princess thought for a moment, to kiss or not to kiss, but in the end, she gave him a kiss. Right away the lad took hold of a rabbit and put it in the satchel for her. So she set off home. But she hadn't got halfway home when the lad blew the whistle again, and the rabbit jumped out of the satchel and scampered back to him. The princess got home, and the king said to her, "Well, did you get a rabbit?" She looked in the satchel and, sure enough, there was nothing in it at all. So she said to her father, "I tried and I asked, but he didn't give me a rabbit," because she was ashamed to say that she had given him a kiss. So the king said, "Never mind, I'll try." So the king dressed up as a poor country lad and took a satchel, and off he went on a donkey to the meadow where the village lad was to be found. When he got there, he said, "God save you, young fellow. How goes it with you?" "Well enough," said the lad. "I have the rabbits to watch over. Have pity on me, young fellow, and give me a rabbit, for I'm as poor can be, and sick, and I need the meat of a rabbit to give me strength." "Willingly," said the lad, "if you kiss the tail of your donkey." So the king thought for a moment, and in the end he kissed the tail of the donkey. Well then, the lad gave him a rabbit. The king took the satchel under his arm and sat astride the donkey. But he hadn't got halfway home when the lad blew that whistle of his, and the rabbit jumped out of the satchel and left it as empty as the day is long. The king got home, opened the satchel, and saw not a rabbit there at all. The princess asked him, "Father dear, did you bring a rabbit?" "Of course I didn't bring one. He wouldn't give me one." Evening came, and the king looked out of the window to see how the lad had lined up the rabbits to come home. Like soldiers on parade, in they came, and all of them present and correct. "Well done, young fellow," said the king. "You've done a very good job. You've passed the test. Now there's one more for you, and if you pass that too, then you'll have my daughter as your wife. Now I want you to tell me as many lies as will fit in a sack." So the lad began to think about what lies he could tell. All the king's councillors sat around in a circle with the lad in the middle, and he started to tell lies. Well, he lied and lied about anything and everything that came into his head. But the king called out, "The sack's not full yet. Carry on with your lying." So he carried on. "Well, you know, when I was looking after the rabbits, the princess came to me and asked for a rabbit and gave me a kiss in return. Well, didn't the princess grow as red in the face as a rose in bloom? She couldn't get over her shame. And after that," said the lad, "the king himself came and I told him to kiss the donkeys." "It's full," shouted the king. "You don't have to say another word. A big sack full of lies." So the lad didn't say another word. And that's how the king gave his daughter to the lad, who watched over the rabbits. Together they lived happily and peacefully. And when the king died, the lad became king. His kingdom was so blessed that it's a pity he isn't still living today. And that's the end of my story. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Golden Calf. Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen, and they had a handsome, strong son and a beautiful daughter. One day the king called his children. "Dear son, it's time for you to go out, find a maiden, and get married. I'm getting old, and you should take over the burdens and problems of the land from me, and you, my daughter, should choose someone whom you would be willing to marry." "Father, I do not need anyone. There is not a maiden in this land who was born for me," the daughter continued. "I don't want to get married, father dear. There is no prince in this land for me." The king became very angry. "Get out of here, both of you. I don't want to see you if you are so picky and choosy." So the prince and the princess set out to see the world. As they were walking across the hills, they walked and walked until they became very tired. They rested underneath a tree, and they soon fell fast asleep. When the girl awoke, she called her brother. "I had a dream, brother. Do you know what I saw?" "What did you see? Tell me." "In my dream, I saw that this tree has magical powers. If you pick a leaf and touch it to the forehead of a sick man, that man will be healed right there and then. And not far from here flows a stream, and even if that man is half dead, he will be cured if he drinks from the water. Let's give it a try." They collected a bunch of leaves and filled their sacks with them. The girl filled her canteen with water, and they continued on their journey. They were walking and walking until they reached another land where everyone was dressed in black. "Good woman, what's the reason for mourning in this land?" "My dear son, the prince is so ill that no one can cure him." Our prince said to his sister, "Let's go and cure him." So they both dressed as doctors and went to see the king. The king was only too pleased to let them in. The princess walked up to the prince and placed some leaves on his forehead. And at that very moment, the prince looked up, their eyes met, and they smiled at each other. The brother of the princess stepped up to the bed and gave the prince a few sips of the healing water. The sick prince sat up in an instant, and he was 100 times healthier than ever before. "I'm not going to let you go, whoever you are. You will be my wife." The brother told his sister, "Well, sister, now you've found your true love. It's time for me to walk on until I find mine." And with that, he continued on his journey. And at one point along the way, he heard the sound of drums. The drummers were announcing that the princess would marry the man who found what mark she had under her arm. There were dozens and dozens of candidates who came to try their luck, but none of them had any success. As he was walking around in the town, thinking hard about the riddle, a blacksmith looked out of his window and called to the young man. "Where are you going and why? I heard the drums and the announcement, and I am supposed to guess what mark the princess has under her arm." "Well, that's easy. I have a lot of gold. I could use that to make a golden calf. Somebody could curl up inside that calf, and we can take the calf to market. The princess will see the golden calf and will buy it, and the person inside the calf will find out what mark she has under her arm." The prince said, "What if that person were me?" "Well, all right, we can agree on that." In the morning, the prince climbed inside the golden calf, and they transported it right to the middle of the marketplace. It wasn't long before the king and the princess came walking by. Father dear, please buy this one for me. It would look so beautiful in the palace." And she kept on pleading until her father bought the golden calf for his daughter. He told his men to place the golden calf into his daughter's room. Evening came, and the princess undressed and went to bed. When the prince was convinced that she was asleep, he opened the little door, climbed out, slowly walked to her bed, and peeked under her left arm. And suddenly he saw what was there: the sun, the moon, and the stars. He laughed out loud, but he woke the princess up. When she saw the stranger in her room, she let out a scream. But the prince was not afraid, and he spoke to the princess. "Stop screaming, lest they find out that I'm here with you." The two of them started talking. They agreed that she would have the calf taken back to the blacksmith. And so it happened. In the morning, her father came in. "Oh, father dear, I accidentally broke off one of its ears. Let's have it taken back to the blacksmith so he can place it back." They took back the golden calf, the blacksmith opened the side door, and the prince climbed out. That afternoon, the prince went to see the king. "Your Majesty, please give me 3 days to think, and I'll find out the truth." And he pretended to think long and hard. Finally, the 3rd day came, and the princess could hardly wait. The king spoke. "So, did you find out?" "Well, Your Majesty, she's wearing the sun, the moon, and the stars under her arm." "Well, by golly, you're right. You've solved the riddle. You can have my daughter and my kingdom, and they had a fabulous wedding with plenty of food and drink for everyone. Of course, they invited the prince's sister and her husband, the other prince, and they did not forget about their parents either. Everyone was happy. The wedding and the party lasted for a whole week, and they all lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. Martin and the Cursed Princess. Once upon a time, there was a poor man who had 3 sons. The youngest son's name was Martin. When the boys grew up, their father turned to them and said, "Well, boys, you've had enough to eat at home, and now you're old enough and strong enough to work. 1 year from now, I want you each to return home with a suit of clothes. Off you go, and may God bless you all." The boys did as they were told, and they started their journey. After a while, they reached a huge old tree. At this point, the road forked into 3 directions. The boys said goodbye to each other, and each of them started walking down a different path. As Martin walked along, he reached a forest. A huge, warty frog was approaching him and spoke to Martin. "I know you're looking for a job. Come on, work for me, and you won't be sorry. All you have to do is chop and saw some wood. Plus put me to bed in the evenings and raise me out of bed in the mornings. Well, what do you say? I'm your man. Wherever I have to work, it's all the same." So he shook the frog's hand and stayed. A whole year passed by. The frog was not a bad employer at all. On the last day it said, "Well, Martin, you've done a good job. Your brothers are taking their new clothes home. But never mind, just go into the pantry and pick whatever you like." Martin selected a nice suit of clothes and started on his return journey homewards. At the old tree, he met his brothers again. "Well, who employed you, Martin?" But as soon as Martin told that he was employed by a frog, the boys nearly fell over laughing. But when they saw his new suit of clothes, they all stopped laughing. They grew yellow with envy. After they got home, they stayed home for a while, but when spring came, their father once again spoke to them. "Well, boys, it's time for you to be working again. But this time tell your masters to pay you with wine." The boys did as they were told. When they got to the tree, they said goodbye again, and each went on his way. The frog was already there in the forest. "Come and work for me, Martin. Your job will be as easy as it was the last time." Martin was already used to the frog, and he didn't mind working at all. When the new year was up, the frog told him, "Hey, Martin, your brothers are already busy carrying their wine home. Never mind anything. Go, find a bottle and walk down into the cellar. Fill it up with the wine you like the best." So the year went by, and the boys met once again at the crossroads. Both brothers were rolling a sizable barrel as they went. When they spotted Martin, they couldn't help laughing at him. "Well, that frog master of yours is not a generous employer. All he ever gave you was this miserable little bottle." Martin didn't say anything. He rolled out the largest barrel and poured the wine into it. Maybe a smaller barrel will be more appropriate, they mocked at him. But it didn't last for long, because when they saw that the bottle was simply not running out of wine, they were so astonished that their eyes bulged out. Their amazement grew when they tasted it. They rested at home for a while, but then their father sent them off to work again. Now you have clothes and you have wine of your own, and you are ready to get married. But you have to find a wife. The boys did like before, and when they got to the fork in the road, they said goodbye to each other once again. Martin went to see his frog, and the two elder brothers went their own way, whatever it was. The frog told Martin, "Well, Martin, this time it's not going to be as easy as before. This time you will have to chop and stack up 3 times as much wood as last year." When the year was over, the frog told Martin, "You've done a good job again, but now you have to be very careful. Gather up my bed linen and take it to the top of that wood stack. Then carry me up and place me on the top of the stack." Martin did as he was told and finally placed the frog on top of the pile of wood. Then he heard the frog call down from the top of the wood, "All right, now go, find a broom, then set the wood stack on fire, and as soon as the wood catches fire, you will see frogs leaping towards the fire from all sides. You must sweep all of them up into the fire, but beware, don't let any of them get away, because that would mean great trouble." Martin begged the frog to come down from the top of the pile, but the frog didn't listen. In the end, he had no choice. He had to set fire to the stack of wood. There was a lot of panic and commotion. There were so many frogs, Martin could hardly sweep them all onto the fire. By nightfall, the fire burned down. The frogs were all lost, including Martin's frog master. Martin was very, very sad. He was still full of sorrow when he fell asleep. The next morning, when he opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful maiden standing next to his bed. "Martin, thank you for saving me. I had to live as a frog with all my household until an honest lad came along and did everything as I told him. But now you have removed the curse." Martin's heart beat loudly when he saw her. The princess jumped into his arms and said, "Your brothers are going home with their wives, but don't you worry. Go down to the courtyard and bring the horses to the best carriage. By the time they get home, we'll be there before them." And so it happened. There was great astonishment and a lot of envy. But Martin was a good brother. He gave each of his brothers 3 sacks full of gold. Then he married the princess and went off to rule as a king. Maybe he could have found himself a better job, but he had no reason to complain, did he now?